Wade, welcome. How are we doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about your life pre-Bristol City then. We know that you joined on loan, of course, when was it now? In early 2014. But you obviously knew Steve Cotterill beforehand. 7 years is a long time in life, let alone football. How did your relationship compare when you joined Bristol City to what it was like back at Burnley?
Well, it was different from Burnley to Bristol City, probably because of me, to be honest. I think Steve probably changed to a degree. He'll tell you that he mellowed between Burnley and Bristol. I don't know if he mellowed as much as he thinks he did. He was still pretty fierce. A complete different relationship from Burnley to Bristol City, but productive, I think. Productive at both ends.
I mean, how does that relationship come about? Is that something that, when Steve or the club approach you to come in on loan, they probably explain to you how you might fit into the system, how many games you are likely to play, where the club is at? In addition to that, would Steve have said, and also I think that we need this sort of person in the changing room, or we could do with, and not an elder statesman, but someone more experienced who can serve as the halfway house between players?
He knew me as a character and he knew me as a person, but he wouldn't have... His impression of me would have still been overwhelmingly that one of sort of 6-7 years ago. And we didn't have time for those conversations. It happened really, really quick. But from a recollection now, it happened really late. I trained. We were playing Brentford that evening. So I got call at Birmingham City, sorry. I think I went upstairs after lunch, signed the forms, then had to rush back to my flat in Birmingham, grab my gear. I think about 2 or sometime after lunch, jumped on the train down to London. Brentford's near Heathrow, isn't it? They get mixed up. It's near Heathrow, so I think I jumped on an airport bus. I got round to the hotel. I think I got to the hotel about 4:30, 5 o'clock. Shoveled whatever food I could get into me, and then I walked straight into a meeting, like a tactical meeting. Got to the ground, and he chucked me on at half time. I didn't know anybody's name. I think I remember calling for the ball. I think Dale Williams had the ball, and I was shouting "mate" at him, like "mate, pass me the ball." Or so there was never any discussions about, listen, we want you to come in and we want you to do this and we want you to do that. I'll be honest, I think they're in a bit of a bad place. And I think they were looking for one or two. They're looking for an older one. I remember him saying on the pitch, we need someone who can just put their foot on the ball and calm us down a little bit. I think Keith Burt, Keith's a brilliant guy. And he's, Keith knows a player. I don't think Keith was that keen on me. Well, I know Keith wasn't that keen on me. And everyone can make a mistake. So I think Keith was a bit and ahhing, and he is very close to Steve. So Steve trusts his opinion implicitly. But I think they needed someone in, and I think Steve knew me from old, and he sort of hadn't seen a lot of me, and he went on his gut, brought me in. You sort of want to stay at your level for as long as you can. So it was a little bit of a thing for me to drop down a league. And my second game I got subbed at half time, and I'm thinking, geez, if this doesn't go well, sort of, if this loan spell doesn't work out for me, then it could be pretty bleak for me going forward as well.
It's not that long ago, but it seems a real world away, the position Bristol City are in when you joined it. From the outside, did you have any perceptions about the club in general? People overuse crap bits of phraseology like sleeping giant, or perennial underachievers, whatever. You can probably pick one. Did you have any thoughts about Bristol City at that point?
It was a club that I was always linked with, and I was at Bournemouth, and I'd sort of been linked and thought, I might end up moving there a couple of times. And the problem was Scotty was always too good. Scotty played my position, and
he did hog the ball a fair bit. We have talked to him, to be fair. I mean, he was good, so maybe it was warranted.
He was a good player, Scotty. So there was never any need for a right winger at City. But it was funny because when the loan came about, it was like I said to you, I didn't have a lot of time to consider or think about it. It was sort of a spur of the moment decision. I think probably little things like that do play on your, when you go on your gut. There's probably things like that have been over years and years when you've been at Bournemouth and you've played against them, and you've half thought about playing there before, and I wouldn't say I had an affinity because it wasn't that strong, but there was always that sort of thread even from Bournemouth going back to it. So when you had to make a sort of spur of the moment decision, that probably all plays into it.
Yeah, it's funny what you can attach sort of familiarity to, isn't there, in some ways, even though it's a new thing and a new place. Just sort of hearing it, I'm sure, or being aware of links, however true they were over a few years, might in some way have made it an easier place to go.
Yeah, you probably put that better than me, attaching familiarity. But it it just felt like when it came in, this might sound really twee, but it just felt quite, Bristol City, it felt quite natural.
Bristol City lost one of their final 13 games in that 13-14 season. And it seemed like there was a lot of momentum. Everyone was talking about momentum. It's probably the word on everyone's lips going into the 2014-15 season. We'll get into some of the signings and some of the iconic games in a second. But one thing that we hear discussed all the time from players and staff who were within that pre-season camp is Botswana. This almost sort of mystical place where bonds were made, teams were formed, whatever, iconic moments, who knows? Someone probably fought off a lion, and you can create your own fairy tale out of it. But as someone who was there and someone who was presumably experiencing their, 20th or 18th pre-season, what made it so special? Why is it still talked about when players discuss that season?
You go to Austria, you go to the States, and you can you sort of finish your training, you mooch off into the nearest town or the nearest or the mall or whatever, and obviously it was more difficult to do that in Botswana. So the lads were on top of each other for a long time, and I think in a strange way that sort of that worked a little bit because it forced us all. We had to socialise. We had to get on. We had to find things to do. Just sped the process up for everything to communicate with each other, find your connections. I think I don't know if it was the environment or whatever it was, but I think it was a good group of people, good lads, good staff, and we were chucked together for 2 weeks. So I think it would have naturally happened over time anyway. I just think Botswana and some of the experiences and some of the things that we did there would have just accelerated the process. The games were. I was talking about this the other day with someone, just describing the second game that we had. I mean, things like that force you to stick together, and you had a shared experience straight off the bat. So, it helps when you've been successful and you've won. I think you can look back at that with hindsight, and there's a danger you can look at it through rose tinted glasses and say, "Oh, this was," but it was a good trip. It was a really good trip. And yeah, I think we were so on top of each other. We had to. I'm thinking of things now. We did a run. It's where, I mean, Steve will claim credit for it, but we used to do this run that it was a 360 meter, and you had to get in a certain time. I think it was about 65 seconds or something. And you did one, and you could get in okay in one. I think we used to do them in sets of 6, and it was tough. By the time you got to 5 and 6, it was tough. You're struggling to get in, and so we used to do 6 sets. And we're in South Africa, and it's hot, and it's a tough run. We've trained in the morning, and we're finishing them off, and Flinty says something like dig in, lads, 2 more to go, or something like that, and Steve goes mental. Steve flies off at Flinty and says, I won't swear, but he'll say, you're not the coach. I'll tell you how many runs you're doing, not you. So I'm looking at Flinty. What have you done? we finish. I think there's like a 15-second break. Go again. I think we end up doing about 12 or 13 of these runs. But the lads are you get to a point where you just the lads all get together and you grit your teeth and you get angry at the gaffer rather than and it's a little thing, but by the time you've got through the 12 or 13 runs, you're a little bit closer together. You've got a shared experience. We the game against it wasn't the national team, it was the club team we played out there, but the game against the club team we played out there was, I think it's the only time I've ever been scared on the pitch, I think. Because I think you have I mean, I played in some bad games in non-league, but if it kicks off in non-league, you know someone's going to come in and break it up. He's thinking, we're just on our own here, right? No, nobody's coming to save us here. So we all had to look out and look after each other. The X Factor, I think people have probably talked about the X Factor thing before, where the lads are getting up and doing so we had all these things during the trip that sort of just bit by bit and just brings you closer. I think by the time we got back to England and training, we were a much closer, tighter group. You know, ready to 1 or 2 nights out help. But yeah, the basis of it, and you wouldn't put everything down to it, but the base of it was that Botswana trip, which was a good trip.
Yeah, just briefly lingering on the Botswana trip. Am I right in thinking that Carly Osborne, I mean, he was sort of on the recipient of a pretty horrific, I mean, tackle is probably a polite word. I mean, we had big plans for Carly Osborne, right? He was sort of, would maybe have rivaled Luke Elliott for that right centre-back spot. He certainly would have been a lot more involved had that tackle not happened. Do you remember that incident?
The tackle was horrendous. The tackle was horrific. And it cut him to the bone. And yeah, you feel for Aussie because obviously I don't know what the starting team would or wouldn't have been, but Aussie would have been right in contention. And it was difficult because once you're out of that team, it was hard to get back in because I think we'd lose 2 or 3 games that season. So yeah, it was difficult to get back in that team. But even that, I was on did I play the first game? I had a little niggle in my calf. I was actually fine, but Steve didn't want me to play in Botswana, so I was sat on the bench. I was stripped. I was sat on the bench watching it, and it was pretty wild. And he's gone to me, go on, calm it down. Just try and calm it down. And the first thing I did when the came on was this lad's tried to wipe me out at about my hip. So I've ridden it, but I've landed on him. And I've landed on him, I've grabbed him around the neck, and I'm throttling him. I'm shouting at him in English. I'm screaming at him in English. And because I've just seen Aussie get taken out as well. And I look over and I just see Steve like that. Yeah, he sent me on to calm it down about 10 seconds later. But it was...
That's experienced pro for you, isn't it? That's what you were brought in for, Wade.
Yeah, that's what I was brought in. But no, it was... there was loads and loads of little bits that went on in that trip that just sort of, like I said, ends up just bit by bit bringing you closer.
Yeah, I bet. What was the feeling then? You said that it seems like the players are obviously quite gelled. You got a great understanding for each other, and you were working out where your close relationships were. And Botswana obviously did a lot of those things. But what was the feeling about matters on the pitch going into the season? We've obviously talked about the fact that City lost just one of their last 13. In your wildest dreams, did you expect the season to go as well as it did?
I wanted to be when I signed Steve straight after I think we played Crawley last game of the season. Was it? No, it's Stevenage. Sorry, played Stevenage last game of the season, and Steve was into the dressing room back next season saying, "Do you fancy it?" And I said, "Well, I want to be. So if we're going to be having a go, we're going to be competing." Because I'd always when I was at Bournemouth, it was always a struggle to get there, and we ended up getting there eventually. Burnley, when I went in, it was a struggle to get there. I wanted to be in a team that was, from the bat, was going to be, a good team competing. I'd not really, Birmingham possibly, but I'd not really, if I wanted to come, I wanted to be coming and having a real go. And he sort of, you know what he's like. Yeah, of course. So he sold me the dream. I was waiting for all these big signings in the summer. So I was the first one to sign. I turned up at the training ground to sign, and Litz was there, Mark Little. So me and Litz had signed, and I was waiting for all these big signings, and we're signing all these lads out of League One. Sort of lads from Stevenage and Yeovil and Oldham, and I'm thinking, it's not quite the dream that you sold me. I'm thinking I'm coming in, we're going to go big, we're going to blitz the league. I'm thinking, well, it's not quite that. I'm not seeing that. But you get into training, they're good lads, and you can see, I can play a bit, but they're big clubs in the league. The first game was Sheffield away. I think we had an okay pre-season, but we hadn't had a stellar pre-season. I remember losing at Western. Never judge a lot of pre-season because you don't know what you're doing, but we hadn't had a stellar pre-season. Then we didn't have a game the week before we played Sheffield, so we had a 2-week gap. So I think going into that, there was a lot of unknown. I think, like I talked about in hindsight earlier, it's easy to sit and say, he signed this player, he signed that player, and it wasn't like we went out and we spent a little bit of money, but it wasn't like we went out and bought all these nailed-ons. It's easy to sit in hindsight and say Luke Ayling, Aidan Flint, and Corey Smith, and and Freezy. They went on to. You have to remember where we were getting them from. So it wasn't. I think went into the first game of the season, it was a little bit, and it always is first game of the season, but sort of not quite sure where we're at. Pembo had been drumming into us all week. I think you've telling the lads that Bramwell Lane was this fortress, and I was like, so we went into that game a little bit. Obviously won, played well, and we just sort of got on a roll from there, got on a bit of momentum from there.
I mean, to play that well on Sky, away from home, against someone who's going to be your rivals coming into the season, and for you to score pretty good goal, mind you. You had some good. You didn't score about too many for City, but they seem to all be pretty good. Does that calm everyone down? You talk about how everyone was feeling ahead of time with the 2 weeks off, not the best pre-season, some people injured, signing promising, but not necessarily totally experienced players. I mean, does that calm everything down after you perform that well?
I think it starts to give you a little bit of, is validation the right word? But you start thinking we're on the something here, like we're on the right track. It would have been one of our toughest games of the season away at Sheffield. So you go there and get a result, gives you a bit of belief. The goal that I scored was actually something we used to work on. We had 3 or 4 routines from goal kicks. And one would be out to Dal Williams, and he'd drop a diag, and the midfielder would make a run inside, and it was off that pattern, just a little bit higher up the pitch. So you win a game off something that you worked on, and then you start thinking. I think it all just fosters belief in what you're doing, in your teammates, in the coaching, in your resilience to go away. I think we hadn't had a game for 2 weeks. Your first game of the season, you're always going to fatigue the last 10, 15 minutes. We're away at Sheffield. You're going to come under a bit of pressure. We'd had it drilled into us for a long time that it was a tough place to go. So I think when you come through that and you win, it all starts adding up and helping a little bit. And obviously you went on a run from there as well.
So I felt like if we went over the majority of the iconic matches or touch points in that 14-15 season, you played a hand in quite a few of them, Wade. We just talked about your goal, opening day of the season against your rivals, Sheffield United. We've got some other positive ones to talk about. One that I'd say a little bit of a fuse between Swindon and Bristol City was your red card in that game. Now, we'll come on to J. Emmanuel Thomas causing a ruckus in the tunnel afterwards and, practically lifting up Swindon players with one hand at a time. But what are your memories of that game? Because it felt like it was the first time where Bristol City came unstuck, and it wasn't really our own doing, was it?
My big memory of the game is that we were brilliant, to be honest. I thought we were so good in the game. And that's what tickled me. I wouldn't say it tickled me because I wasn't in that frame of mind. But I remember them going mental at the end. I remember them celebrating at the end like I wasn't in the tunnel because I had to go up to the stands to watch it. So by the time I got down to the tunnel, I was just hearing about it afterwards. But they were on the pitch going like they won the World Cup. We played with 10 men for the whole game. And I couldn't say we battered them, but like, we were giving them a proper game with 10 for 90 minutes. They won it. They won it off. They won it off one moment. We could have equalised. Albion had equalised towards the end. So we've played them with 10 for 95 minutes, and we might have even edged the game. We possibly edged the game overall. They're celebrating. I'm thinking, like, you can't live with us. You cannot. 11v11, you can't live with us. You're not going to get anywhere near us over the course of the season. Like, you're jumping around like idiots. You're jumping around like buffoons. Honestly, that was my big take from the game. Like, I knew after that game that we were going to go up. Like, we were too good and we had too much spirit. Like, that game was the first game that we'd lost all season. And you wanted to see what we were like. We were winning. All right. But when we hit a bit of a patch, like when we hit a rough patch, what we're going to be like? Are we going to be able to come through it? And I knew after that game, it wasn't even a question. I knew that we were going to, that we'd do what we set out to do at the start of the season. And that was my big overriding memory of the day, to be honest, along with sort of a couple of other bits. But obviously on a personal level, I was gutted. But I remember leaving thinking we're in a really good place.
I just thought we'd touch about the visit to Wembley in the Johnstone's Trophy final. Obviously, fond memories of Wembley already with your exploits for Burnley. To be a captain at Wembley with this team that you formed such a strong bond, 40-odd thousand Bristol City fans there cheering you on. I mean, that must be one of your most enjoyable games as a footballer, surely.
I think by then I'd had the call from Steve about coaching the following season. So I hadn't quite made a decision. I didn't know whether I wanted to carry on playing somewhere else or if I wanted to coach. I felt it was a little bit early for me, but sort of we were expecting my son, and I'm sure I'll come to that later on. But anyway, so I knew this might sort of be coming towards the end. So to be able to lead a team up the steps at Wembley and lift a trophy sort of towards the end of your season that was pretty special. That was a big moment. Unfortunately, I had a long career, hundreds and hundreds of games, but that was a real special one. Yeah.
One other key moment in the season that perhaps we've actually skipped past was the match at home to MK Dons. Again, you're playing key role in these crucial games. You talked about the goal against Sheffield United, the sending off against Swindon. Now, I always saw you as a reasonably cool customer on the pitch. I mean, we talked about, you being brought on in Botswana to calm things down and not doing that. But the moment against MK Dons really sticks out to me, and probably sticks out to a few other Bristol City fans, because, there was an error from you with the back pass that was underhit that Afobe takes it round the keeper. At that point, it's pretty positive place overall, Bristol City, around before that game, right? We're in a good place. We're near the top of the division. Everything's hunky-dory. And suddenly, it almost felt like the crowd had forgotten what it was like to go 1-0 down or to be in a position of weakness. And they responded to you personally and the team almost in a slightly overzealous way. I wonder if you felt similar in the moment after scoring, because you came to the crowd and almost were like, there's my response. You question me, there's my response. I feel like it was a real outpouring of emotion from you in that moment, and not something we'd seen before.
No, I'll be honest. I wasn't really aware of it from the crowd until you just said that. It wasn't really that. It was the dugout. I was more going. It was more our dugout. You could see, and myself. It was such a. The game was. It was a big game. It was first v. Well, I don't know if we were first v second, but it was. It was big, and the game was sort of back and forth. It was, and I remember getting the ball in midfield and thinking, you just need to, this is too hectic. You just need to calm it down. So calm the game down, and I turned back. I thought I'll go back to Frank and we'll reset. And I couldn't. It's inexplicable. I toe poked it. I couldn't tell you why I toe poked it. It was. So obviously I can still see Bennick running through now. And I worked with Bennick at Stoke years later. I was used to tell him it's the best assist he ever had. So I didn't realise that. I didn't realise. I wasn't aware of the crowd. Like, you'd expect the crowd to groan if we just conceded, and it was a colossus mistake. That wasn't really on my mind. I was angry at me. And I could see our dugout, or I can't remember the reaction, but I remember getting irate at the reaction. I wanted to put it right. I didn't think it was going to happen. The next time I got the ball, so the ball came to me, and I thought, I'm just drive, just charge, correct your mistake. Didn't think it was, you don't think it's going to happen sort of 15, 20 seconds later, but through on goal, finish, and then obviously all the emotion in the last minute, 30 seconds is just, and that to grab me before I got to the dugout, which was probably handy. But no, it was, and we ended up coming back and winning the game. And I was just joking with the lads. That was the moment. That was the moment that we were on our way. That was the biggest moment of the season, lads. It was us or MK Dons, and put them to bed.
Well, I think most Bristol City fans feel the same way about MK Dons as I do. So any chance to revisit a key goal against them is crucial. I mean, what would have happened? Come on, you would have been 200 games in your mid-30s. If they hadn't grabbed you before the dugout, what, you would have jumped into the arms of your loving coaching staff? Or nothing would have happened. Come on.
I don't know what I would have done. I obviously hadn't thought that through. But no, it was just a pure sort of outlet of emotion, wasn't it? But it was good. It's, again, that's one of my, some atmosphere at home that season. Sort of, I remember the atmosphere in that game being really, really good.
Do you think in some ways we missed that layout of the ground? I mean, probably not having a shed behind one goal, but there's always a debate about this new grand spanking 27,000 seater stadium and the old Ashton Gate, where everyone was on top of each other and the noise carried in a different sort of way. You would have experienced both.
I think we probably just sound like hobmen. But I'm a Southampton fan. I grew up watching Saints at the Dow, and to me, the Dow is the best ground ever in the world ever. I actually think the new stadium's really good. I understand it's not an old ground where the acoustics, it's all on top of you, but in terms of, I think it's brilliant that they've stayed where they are. And there's not been that many clubs that have been able to do that. So they've been able to stay at Ashton Gate, which is top. And in terms of how they designed it, I think it's a really nice modern ground. And you talked about sort of over the past 10 years, I've been lucky. I get to go a fair bit. I think like the atmosphere there is, obviously you've got the section in the corner, and I think there's a real go at creating a good atmosphere around the stadium. When I speak to people from other clubs and they come and visit, they're really, really complimentary about it. So I think as a long-standing fan, it's always going to power in if you compare it to where you grew up watching them. But as grounds go, I think it's one of the better ones.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I remember seeing a really good survey that asked people of all ages, thousands of people, when the best era of music is, and basically nearly everyone said the era of music when they were a teenager, essentially. So people who were 90 said the same thing as people who were 25. They all picked the same sort of era. So you speaking about Adele with sort of rose tinted spectacles.
Associate with it, eh?
Yeah, certainly, certainly. And it helps having a dotted line near your name, right? If City are winning the double or avoiding relegation by a point, it's sure as hell going to be a hell of a lot louder than if you're in the middle, sort of
Yeah, true.
with little to fight for. Okay, I mean, we talked about that Swindon red card, that was the game in which it almost confirmed in your mind, we're going to make it. What was the revenge game like? I mean, to beat them 3-0 on your home patch, Flinty say that iconic thing on Sky Sports after the game. Steve Cotterill refer to teams being unable to win when you're like that, speaking to the fans post-atmosphere.
So the atmosphere was electric. The atmosphere was brilliant. And he was desperate to not put me on because he thought I was going to do something. And I kept saying to him, "Do you really think I'm that stupid? Do you really think I'm that stupid? Do you really think I'm going to do?" And it was funny because he said to me something like, when I went on, he went, "You promised me you're not going to." I looked at him and went, like, "Behave." And I think the ball came to him. I'm sure the ball came to him on the touchline sort of a minute or two later, and he's thrown it at someone, or it was like the reversal. Me looking at him going, "Hey." But no, I just remember the atmosphere was electric. We were on sort of we blitzed them really. That night we were too quick, too powerful, too motivated, and we were too good. We were too good on that night, and the crowd were too up for it. I think we would have given almost anybody a game that evening.
Now, I've always heard a lot about what Steve Cotterill is like when things aren't going well. So how about we focus in this moment about what he's like when things are going well? When you're in that dressing room, after that atmosphere, after that moment, you've got iconic quotes from player and manager after that Swindon game. What's life like for a player after a big win when Steve Cotterill's your head coach?
He's probably thinking about the next one, to be honest. Probably thinking about the next game. Like, we were winning most of that season, and you wouldn't really notice a change in him. He was unbelievably driven. Stayed right on top of everybody. Was over every detail, and you can't really talk about that season without acknowledging he was the driving force. He was the one who crafted it. Was he different when he was tough when you were losing? He was hard when you were getting beat, but he was hard on you when you were winning as well. And no, he's astute enough to recognise we had a lot of momentum. And he kept it driving, kept it rolling. I can't remember how many. Did we play 60-odd games that season?
Yeah, we played a lot. So we did all right in the FA Cup, didn't we?
Played a lot of games that season. It's really difficult to maintain that level for 60 games unless you've got someone sort of staying on top of all the details. And he was, to be fair.
What was your memory of the system itself? Because ultimately, yes, like you said, it was Steve who created it and drove it forward.
Well, he changed a lot. He was 4-4-2 at Burnley, and it was direct. It was very direct, but it was Burnley with no money in the Championship, and he had to find a way of just survive it at that level, to be honest. But it was. I remember we do shake sessions, and I was playing on the wing. It was my job to come short and do a deco. I remember doing this for about half an hour. I was absolutely knackered. I hadn't touched the ball. I was thinking, when do I see the ball in this system? And when I joined on loan, we did play 3-5-2. We played 3-5-2. But I think what he had the chance to do that summer was to recruit players to play it the way that he wanted to play it. So he could go and he could get a Luke Hayden who could step out and carry the ball, and he could get wing backs who could play high and get beyond people, and he could get a Freezy in midfield. And not speaking for him, but I think a lot of his jobs he's been firefighting or striving. He's had to find a way to make it work. This was probably one of the only jobs where he could recruit. He had the resources to recruit. And so we didn't spend big money, and he probably spent the Sam Baldock money. So it was probably about neutral, but he had that little pocket to recruit tactically what he wanted. And I felt that essentially I knew after Swindon that we were the best team. I thought Swindon were a really, really good footballing team. I thought they could outpass almost every team in the league. Preston were up there, Preston would beat you up. So Swindon would football you, Preston would beat you up, MK Dons would football you. I felt like we could do both. I felt like we had the players who could give you a game of football if you wanted to, but if we needed to grind out a result, if we needed to win off a set play, if we needed to batten down the hatches and ride out a storm and win off a set play, which we did once or twice, we could do that as well. So I just thought over the course of the season, we were the most rounded team. We were the team that would survive the most scenarios. And he was able to piece that together and put that together. He could get in the right personnel, the right characters. He built a really good squad. We had a great group of people behind the scenes. So everybody was. You asked, talking about Wembley. We travelled to London I can't remember if the game was on Saturday or Sunday, but we travelled to London 3 days before, and we took everybody. We took everybody from the training ground, decamped to the hotel, and it was. I think it was a little bit of recognition, a little bit of payback that everybody's contributed to this. Everybody was all in. So on the pitch, off the pitch, he was across a lot of it.
Yeah, a lot of people would see that summer as the greatest in recent history for Bristol City. Everything seemed to fit in perfectly with the plan, and the plan certainly came to fruition. We'll talk about the intermediary period between the two seasons in just a second, but I mean, if you look at that final 13 games, unbeaten. I mean, some massive, massive moments, right? That revenge against Swindon, we talk about the 3-0, drawing away at Preston to all but confirm the fact you're going up, and then going away to Bradford and winning 6-0. I mean, if you could pick a way to go up, I imagine it would look something like that.
We got to celebrate about 4 or 5 times, I think. One time we got promoted, one when we won the league, one when we got the trophy, one after Wembley. So it was sort of, it was like a Mardi Gras every other weekend on that run into the season.
Beats a lot. Now, obviously, we ended the season in a great way, right? Winning 8-2 again. Another moment where you think this is just getting a bit silly now. I think when Aidan Flint put that Rabona in, you thought, hey, maybe this is actually getting a little bit mean to League One the way that we're going up. Now, you said that partway through the season, rather, there'd been conversations between you and Steve about pursuing coaching badges, about plans for the season after. Now, we don't live life with the benefit of hindsight ahead of time, but in hindsight, is there a part of you that wonders what could have happened, would have happened if you had chosen to play on? Was it an easy decision?
No, it wasn't an easy decision at all. I didn't want to. I mean, I was still fit, and I don't remember how many games. I think I played about. I don't know how many games I played that season. 30, 40. But I mean, I felt that I'd contributed. I felt that my contribution was pretty significant over the course of the season. Like I said earlier, when we were talking about Aussie earlier, it's difficult because when you lost your place in the team, it wasn't a team that got beat, so it was tough to get it back. And Marlon came in, and Marlon was excellent. So I was out the team, but it was a team that was had Blitz League One. It was a team that I was still, even when I wasn't starting, I was still contributing and having my. So I thought in my head, you captain of a team that's just got 100 points and you played 40 games. It wasn't even a discussion. I thought I would be part of the group going forward next season. So was it an easy decision? No. Steve called me, said, look, this is what I'm thinking. Went in, we chatted about it. I said, look, I'm not sure. I probably should have been a little bit. I'm not saying I would have changed anything or it was the right decision, wrong decision, but I'm not. But I think I should have probably things I should have raised to him. I said that I was contributing over the course of the season. I could still do a bit on the pitch. even going up the level, I still think there would have been. I watched the first 8, 9, 10 games of the season, and I think we were leading or drawing in a lot of it. I was looking at the bench, and there was just there wasn't a lot of know-how on the bench. Good players, like top players, but there wasn't a lot of know-how on the bench to just come on and see the game out, keep everybody together, keep everybody compact, make sure everyone's switched on, organised. We're defending a corner, make sure everybody's doing their jobs. It might have been worth a few points. Like, it might have been worth 5, 6 points. And that might have made a big difference. That might have had us 5 or 6 points higher at the table, and it might have taken the shackles off the lads a little bit and let their quality come out a little bit sooner. These are all ifs and buts, aren't they? But if that had happened and Steve had stayed in the job and we could have kept, you look at the team, what we went on to do, you look at the individuals and where they ended up, if you could have maybe just kept that together a little bit longer. But they're all, and I should have, Steve would never, ever, ever really been aware of what he would have sensed to a degree, but he wouldn't know the ins and outs of what went on behind the scenes or the dressing room, he doesn't know half the stuff I had to sort out and deal with in the dressing room now. And there was a big value in that he would never ever have been aware of. And I think I should have made the case a little bit stronger.
Been more assertive in yourself?
But my circumstances were that we were expecting. I didn't really want to move. So we were settled. I didn't really want to move to play, and I wanted to coach, and I knew that it was a good offer. So that was sort of weighing on me as well. And I don't regret going in. I enjoyed it. I went in that year. It was brilliant for me. I had a good group. I think I did quite well with the group that I had. I wasn't the most experienced coach, but I managed to connect with, I had Max. I don't know anything about goalkeeping, so I had Max, but that was the goalie coaches. I had Zach, I had Joe Morale, I had, Sean McCulsey, who's gone on to have a career. We had some good lads. And despite being an experienced coach, I think I managed to connect and help them, and I enjoyed the role. But you could sort of see the lads struggling on the pitch and still itching to get in and help, really.
We've talked about the summer beforehand, right? This magical summer in Botswana, this magical summer where Cots was allowed to pick the players for this team, and in hindsight, pick them absolutely perfectly, even if there were some doubts at our end when those players were signed. How can you go from such a perfect summer ahead of that iconic season to a summer where actually one of the potential signings we were rumoured to have got could have made that 5-6 points difference, and actually within the first couple of games of a season you start to see frustrations in and around the club that things hadn't transpired in the same way they had 12 months prior?
I don't really know the ins and outs of it, to be honest, but it's not as... You're going up a level, so it's not that you're competing with big clubs. There's a limited pool of players that are available in a window, and you're competing with big clubs to get them. So I don't quite know the ins and outs of what did or didn't go on in the window that summer. But like I said to you, I just look at it as, you look at the lads, you look at that team, and Luke Hayden Frankie had a brilliant career. Luke Hayden went on to captain the team in the Prem. Flinty went for a lot of money in the Champ. You had Derek Williams, Greg Cunningham played in the Prem, Joe Bryan. Litz had a great career. You had Marlon, who played, I don't know how many championship games. Freezy, the same. Corey. Codge. We had Codge up front, who ended up going for a lot of money. The bones of the team were, there. When Steve left and me and Pembo were doing it, I used to have these conversations with the lads. The lads would get frustrated with Codge that he wouldn't run back and he wouldn't do this. And I sat with Codge and we'd chat and he'd tell me about France and what he was and wasn't expected to do. I used to have to go back to the lads and say, look, what you got to understand is you might have to do a little bit of his running, but Codge might get you the point to keep you in the league here. So you're gonna have to suck it up for a little while. And he did, to be fair. He did. He produced Codge.
I mean, to some, it was slightly surprising the speed at which Steve Cotterill was then sacked. Yes, we were certainly flirting with relegation, to say the least, but we knew that big signings were coming in. It was evident that Lee Tomlin was going to come in before, Lee Tomlin would have been a player under Cots. It wasn't that Lee Tomlin was only coming in if Cots went. Do you remember how that group reacted? Because to have such a inspirational season, just the one before, with him at the helm, football was a mean sport at the worst times. But was there surprise from the staff, from the players?
Oh yeah, there was. There was shock. There was surprise. So I can't remember why I didn't see my phone, but I didn't get the call until I got the call about 10-15 minutes before it went on Sky. And I can't remember why I didn't see my phone, but anyway, I answered my phone and it was someone from the club and they said, look, we were trying to get hold of you for the last couple of hours. He said, but Steve's left the club and you're going to be taking it. You and Pembo sort of work it out between you. You're going to be taking it. So it was a big shock to me. I was like, Jesus, phone Steve. Spoke to him on the phone. Can't remember the gist of the conversation, but he was obviously upset about it.
Do you think he was surprised? Could he see it coming?
I don't know. I don't know, to be honest. But it was some season before that you'd overseen, so I'm sure. Look, I've been there, and you think you have a bit of credit. You think what you've done in the previous would buy you a little bit of credit. So I'm sure he thought that as well. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I'm sure what he'd done over the past 2 years, I'm sure he thought it brought him a little bit of leeway. I don't think we just dropped in the relegation zone.
I think we might have been one place above it.
Might have been just above it. So yeah, I'm sure there was a bit of surprise from his end. In terms of the group of the players in the club, I think there was a big, and obviously I was in the next morning, and that was the first thing really, to get around the lads. Bit of a
weird jump from being a lone player to a captain, and in this group you're going out with them every other week to celebrate a win the season before, and then suddenly, albeit with Pembo, your caretaker for essentially what is a group of your mates that probably a year ago you're probably bundling them into a taxi and booking them kebabs on the way home, etc.
Yeah, a little bit, but it was always, I mean, it was always, but I was always, they were 24, 25 and I was 35. So there was always, like, we had nights out, but me on a night out was a lot more sensible than them on a night out. So I think I was close to a lot of them, but I was always sort of the older, more sensible one, babysitting them more than partying with them. And that sort of followed through on the day-to-day and on the training ground. So there was that sort of shift. But that was I'd only been coaching for 6 months. So in terms of putting a session on, I wasn't yet at that level. So in terms of the grasp, Pembo would see the grasp. Mine was more
personal stuff.
My bit of it more was sort of looking at the games coming up, getting around the players, dealing with the players, making sure, sort of seeing where they were, and that was the first bit really. Sort of the next day when we got in, it was finding out. And it's always the same. There'll be some lads in the group who Steve had left out, and they'd have been relieved that he'd gone because they're thinking, "Oh, we'll get a chance here." But a lot of them were really grateful to him for what he'd done. A lot of them loved him as a manager, liked him as a fella. So it was getting around a lot of them and picking them up and sort of saying to him, "You need to, this happens in football. It's going to happen to you. If it hasn't happened to you already, losing a manager, it's going to plenty of times, and you need to park it up as soon as possible because you've got yourself to think of, and I need to start getting some results," which we did, to be fair. Which we got 1 or 2 in that period. Their reaction was really good.
Yeah, no, the form was amazing. So many moments. I mean, yeah, you mentioned Zach Viner. He made his debut, didn't he? Jonathan Codger ended the season with real form and some great moments from him. I mean, I don't want to laser in on every single player. You've played with Bristol City, so you play with a lot, but one that has this amazing story arc as a City player is Lee Tomlin. I mean, he came in and I don't know what he did. He was on absolute fire. He obviously didn't keep us up single-handedly, but he was certainly a big gear shift in our results and performances. He seems a character, to say the least.
No, I think I think Tomo was the right person at the right time. I think it was, I think, like you said, it was, we were under the cosh a bit for the first half of the season. There'd been sackings. You're fighting to stay above the line for the whole season, and Tomo came in, and Tomo had quality. So Tomo could produce a moment to win you a game or unlock a door, which we probably didn't have bundles of at the level at that time. So you're sort of really over-reliant on 1 or 2 players, and Tomo took the pressure off them a little bit. But also he was, he's double lively, Tomo. Like, really, really. And we probably needed that around the place in that moment. You need someone to come in who was bubbly, full of confidence, didn't really give two hoots about sort of what people thought of him, or and he gave everybody a little bit of a lift. He was loud. He could be overbearing at times, Tomo. But he did lift the place. He lifted the place, and he helped on the pitch. Like you say, I wouldn't put it all down to Lee by any stretch, but he did help. He did help take the pressure off 1 or 2, and he helped lift their performances as well. I mean, my last game in taking the team was at Charlton away. I think we were in the relegation zone. I don't know how the games have panned out, but we were in the relegation zone, and Tomo took the penalty. So we got the penalty, and Tomo was, you'd fancy Tomo in those. He loved the attention. He loved the big moments. You were confident when he stepped up and took it, and we ended up winning the game 1-0. And then the club never went back in the relegation zone all season. So it was big. It was a big, for me, that was a big stretch of games. It was a big moment. Trying to galvanise a little bit off the back of Steve going, which was a big thing. And then, like I said, I think Tomo come in at just the right time to pick everybody up.
Yeah, right person, right time, certainly. Amazing techniques, amazing goals. That obvious free kick away to Fulham, and the sort of flick up to his left foot half volley against Huddersfield. I mean, Charlton away, that's probably one of the worst penalties I've ever seen that's ended up in the net, but if it goes in, then it can't have been that bad. Just back onto you then. A bit of an interesting sort of career trajectory, right, in that several months or so, and that you've got a real chance to play on for a little bit longer, but with your personal situation at home and the fact that it's not so often you get offered a coaching role like that at a club like Bristol City, which values its academy, so you take that role, and then fast forward several months and the person that offered you that role has gone, and you've almost moved up a step to a new role, and a new coach has moved in Lee Johnson. I think it was the 7th of June 2016, right, when you moved on from Bristol City. Only 12 months from this quite important decision. I presume you didn't expect things to move that quickly, and that you barely even got half a year in the role you originally gave up your football career for.
Yeah. No, I didn't expect it, to be honest. We'd the whole point of me finishing playing was because we were setting down roots in the area. So we were expecting, we'd bought a house. And yeah, I never really set out on career plan, but I expected to be at City for some time. Um, and I thought I'd done a decent job as well in the first. I took the 21s. I think we had 6 debuts that season from the 21s. Took Zach as a 16-year-old. We had George Dowling. We had sort of helped get Joe. Joe was a great lad. We sort of helped get Joe not back on track. That would be too strong, but gave Joe a bit of love, and he was brilliant for us. So yeah, felt that I'd done a decent job in the 21s. Felt that I'd done a decent job with the first team in a really difficult period when they needed it. But yeah, it came to the end of the season, and Lee wanted to bring in, which you get in football. Lee wanted to bring in his own people, wanted his own people around him. So yeah, and that's sort of how it went down. So yeah, it was a little bit brutal is too strong a word, but it was a little bit. It was difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine sudden, maybe not to give you words to pick from. I mean, you talked about earlier when you had the chance to carry on playing or take this coaching role. You say that I asked you if maybe in hindsight you weren't assertive enough to sort of put your own plaudits and merits and attributes across. How does it work when you're removed from the under 21s role? Can you do the same? Can you say, well, actually, I did this and players have come up. Is there another way that I could stay on, or you just have to grin and bear it?
No, I think there was a moment when I was assertive. But no, I think ultimately the manager's got the right to have the staff around him that he wants for whatever reason, that might be. And I think you can only argue that to a certain point, and then you have to respect that that's sort of the direction that he wants to go in.
I mean, most of us in the normal world away from football, when we leave a job or are fired or are asked to leave or get a new one, we're normally told a reason for why that change has occurred. Were you given a reason?
No, I don't remember. I think it was just I've been coaching a year. I was right at the start of my coaching journey, and I think that Lee wanted someone that he knew better in the role. I think it was just as simple as that. And I think that is, like I say, that is football. That's obviously it was my first experience of it, but sort of I've been around that side of it a little bit longer now, and you sort of understand that it is. Maybe I was a bit naive in expecting to, buy a house and put down roots and expect to be at the club for a longer period of time, because I think that's probably more normal in football, that the change and the churn is probably more the norm in football.
Talking to more and more footballers, you realise that there's little time for sentiment a lot of the time in this game that we hold so dearly. Final few questions from me then. We'll get on to a couple of quick fire bits that we ask everyone who comes on the podcast. But you say that you've been to Ashton Gate a fair bit as a spectator, both on your own and with your family. I mean, since you've left the club, it's quite a big question, so you can zoom in on where you want. But what have you made of the arc of the club in the past several years since you left it?
Well, it's only been upwards. I think it's only been upwards, and that's it's nice to think that our team played a part in setting the foundations for that to go on. But yeah, it has only been upwards. It was I mean, the atmosphere, the last few games of last season, the atmosphere was top, was as good as I was on the pitch against Preston.
No way.
My little boy ran on the pitch, and I thought, he'll be all right. He sort of knows where he is. He knows where I am. And then within about a minute, the pitch was engulfed. And I was thinking, oh, fuck, I'm going to lose him. You have to jump on and go, and so I'm jumping on and going in and out, and fans are high fronting it. Yeah.
It's like, hang on, is that Wade? Is that Wade Elliott?
But yeah, no, I was on there. It was good fun. Yeah.
That's wicked. I love that.
But it's been good. I think the atmosphere's been good, and the club's been in. It's a tough league. It's a really tough league, but they've been incrementally building, and it's been a good place to go and watch.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Oh, that's what being dad's all about, man. I mean, I'm not one yet, but running on the pitch against Palace in Hartlepool with my dad, him thinking I'm being crushed or lost. I'm sure there's better ways to connect with your son than praying out about him being accidentally knee slid by a drunk overzealous City fan. But hey, it's bonding nonetheless. Okay, that's a slightly mad way to finish. But the last few questions, then, a couple of quick fire bits for you. 3 questions we ask everyone when they come on the podcast. First of all, we've talked about quite a few moments of yours in a City shirt. But if you had to pick, and maybe you could pick one that some of us might not have known, maybe it's one that all of us will revisit when it comes around every year. But if you had to pick one moment during your time at Bristol City as a favourite, one that you think sort of either sums up your time here or one that brought you the highest high, what would that moment be, your favourite moment in a Bristol City shirt?
The MK Dons one was a good one. The MK Dons one was good, but even lifting the trophy, sort of my last act as a professional footballer was walking out in. It was great. I was talking about this a couple of days ago with someone. So last thing I did as a footballer was walk out. Stadium was packed. I was the last person out to be announced. I had all my mates and all the staff in front of me, and I walked up to them and lifted the trophy. That was pretty. I mean, as it goes, there's ways to go out as a footballer. That's sort of takes some beating. But even when I was the first game as interim was Middlesbrough away, and I stayed out on the Friday. It was Middlesbrough at home, sorry, and they were top of the league, and I stayed out on the Friday. At the end of the Friday, stayed out with Bobby and Wes, and Bobby was delivering corners, and he was scuffling. Stayed out with Bobby for sort of 5-10 minutes, and Bobby was just practicing the technique, putting them in. And Wes was his mate. They came through together. So Wes is in the box heading, and last minute, sort of Bobby puts the corner in, and Wes heads it in, and we win 1-0. And you're thinking this is a doddle. It's a doddle. But there were loads of. I mean, as a player, as a coach, seeing some of the lads. Like I go back now, and I took Zach from. Zach was 16, and Zach bypassed the 18s and came straight into 21s with me. That wasn't me. I wasn't as aware of Zach as Brian or Damien, the lads or Gary Pro, the lads who were doing the. But like I had Zach as a 16-year-old, and I went to a game last season, saw his mum, and you see Zach playing every minute of every game, and you think, you're able to help on that journey, and so there's loads. It's difficult to pick out one, but in terms of, I mean, I was there for 2.5 years, but it was a really, really, in that 2.5 years, you sort of crammed in, like you said, I was captain of a double winning team. I coached in the academy. I managed the first team. I crammed enough into that 2.5 years to make some good memories. So it's obviously my home now. So it's a club and a place that I'm very fond of, and I do have lots and lots of good memories of.
Just briefly on Zach, I spoke to Naki Wells a couple of weeks ago, and he said that he's by far the most undervalued player in the Bristol City squad currently. That he's got everything. I mean, it's impressed you. I mean, obviously, it has impressed you, but it must be a million miles away from the young, nervous 16-year-old that you must have first encountered.
He was never that nervous, to be honest. I forgot about Lloyd. We had Lloyd Kelly. Lloyd the same. Lloyd had as a 16-year-old. I remember him and Lloyd used to, like, right foot, left foot, be out and ping the ball to each other. I never ever saw Zach always had he we played. I remember we played Charlton in the 21s. We played Charlton. They had Adamola Lookman. It was at the training ground. They were good, and it was the wind. It was wind and rain. It was like a gale force coming in, and we were playing against it in the first half. And the last thing I said to the lads was, "Play the conditions. Like, just play the conditions." I think we were 2-0 down after 5 minutes. Lads trying to play out, and so half time I've given it to the lads. I'm giving them a bit. Told you play the conditions. What you. So it was about 3 or 4 days later, Zach come up to me at training. He said, "Gaffer, do you know when you said play the conditions?" I said, "Zach, please, mate. I've only just got over it. Like, I don't want to go over it again." He's gone, "No, what does that mean? What did you mean?" And it was a great learning for me, because I'm telling these boys who are 16, thinking play the conditions, and thinking they should know what that means. I've played 600 games. I know what it means, but it doesn't.
You probably heard it 100 of them.
Yeah, but that doesn't translate that they know what it means. So it was brilliant for me. But Zach was always that. Zach could come up to me at 16 and he could have that. He could broach that. He could have that conversation. He could approach me and he could have that chat. And I could go back to the lads then. I go back to the lads and I could use that to address them and say, "Listen, Zach's come. We've had this conversation. How many of you? When I told you play the conditions, what were you thinking?" You could see they all put hands up. I said, "We didn't really know." But in terms of Zach, yeah, I never really saw him as. I always thought he had really good. He was good. Athletically, he was very good. But his mentality he was driven, and he was he thought about things. He wanted to learn. He wanted to pick things up, and that him coming having that conversation with me was a really good example that he wanted to take things on board. And I think if you've got lots of people who've got the technical, tactical, and the physical attributes, but if you can ally them to being a learner and having that type of mentality, then you've got a real chance. And it's not a big surprise to me what he's gone on to do, to be honest.
Yeah, we're big fans of him on the podcast. Okay, last 2 questions then. First off, you've played with a fair few people in that year or so at Bristol City. Some amazing players, technical players, all sorts. We ask every Bristol City, every ex-Bristol City player for their dream City 5-a-side team. So now think, this isn't just on the training pitch. This is at goals. You're going to be playing against people that want to beat you up. Who's going to bring their shin pads? Who's going to be late? Who's actually going to play who's actually going to pay the £5 fee on time? Who's not going to be answering in the WhatsApp group? From players you've played with in your short time at Bristol City, you can include yourself at your one. Who would be your starting 5, keeper included?
Well, Jet wouldn't pay the £5.
Okay,
but he and he would probably be late. But you said if they want to beat you up, so I'd have to have Jet in it. I could always be a little bit cheeky because we had a fairly big team. But
great start.
In all seriousness, in terms of natural talent, Jet was outrageous. How big's this pitch? Because if it's not that big and Jet doesn't have to run around, I'll definitely have him in it.
We'll go wide goals. It's probably a third pitch size. The sort of stuff you'd see at goals or.
Well, Frankie was the best goalie, so Frankie would have to be in goal. I think you'd have to have Luke. You have to have Luke Hayden in it. Luke, really good footballer. Would you have to have 2 defenders? So we had some good players. I'd have Flinty was really good. Flinty was good in the 5-a-side. But he would never he'd never stay at the back. He'd always gallop off. So
yeah, I can see them getting quite excited. I mean, he scored a lot of goals. People it was just sort of normalised, wasn't it? He scored 15 and then 7 and 8. I feel like we just sort of got used to it. And then he went and suddenly you were like, oh, where have those 7 goals gone?
Yeah, I'd put those 2 in. Freeze was a good player. You have to have a midfield, Freezy, or Bobby was good in the 5-a-side. Bobby was good in the 5-a-side. He could drop a shoulder. He could. And then a Jet up front. I'd have to have Jet up front, then I guess.
So you're not including yourself. You're not gaffer for your own 5-a-side team, Wade. Or are you content to come off the bench here?
Can we? No, I've joined a 6-a-side league.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Okay. So just clarify. So you got Fielding in goal.
Yep. I'll have Luke at the back. I'll have me and Bobby in midfield, and I'll have Jet up top.
Gorgeous.
Leaving out some good players there.
Who are the near misses?
Who
Who will be most angry?
It would be most angry. Flinty would be most angry. But I almost feel like I have to put Marlon in it, because otherwise they think that I'm just being bitter that he took my place. Harsh on Freezy, because Freezy was very good. Sam Baldock for a finisher. Sam was good. But no, we had some good players.
Bobby Reid. It always made me sad how long it took Bobby Reid to break into that team. I got to say, I used to go to watch a lot of those under-18 and under-21s games, and he always looked capable. Why did it take him so long?
I don't know, because I sort of came in, and I think I talked about that Oldham game earlier, and I think it was Bobby that got injured, and I went on. But he was. People do go at different speeds. You know, some people sort of burst in at 16, 17, and other people it's a little bit more of a slow burn. But Bobby was always, right from the back, you could tell Bobby was, just had a real nice natural balance and nice natural ability. He was a great kid, like brilliant kid. So yeah, it might have taken him 1 or 2 seasons longer than you might have expected, but he's making up for it now.
We end every episode in the same way, Wade. We ask people if they had a message to Bristol City fans, because it's not always the way that you get a chance to circle the pitch and clap people. It's not often you get a chance to sort of, walk down the tunnel into the distance and wave goodbye to these City fans. So to those City fans listening, they would have heard you encapsulate your time here, but what else would you like to leave ringing in their ears?
I think they were really, really good with me, to be in fairness. I think so. They sort of took me in right from the bat. So was very grateful to them for that. And I'll see most of them over the course of the season anyway. Or walking around, or sort of bump into most of them in the gym or in the coffee shop. So no, I had a great time. I had a great time at the club. I've made it my home. They've always been brilliant with me. And I would say, just if I'm sort of next time I'm cutting them up on the bad driving, I'm cutting them up, or I'm sort of banging into them in Sainsbury's or wherever it is, just carry on being nice and being kind to me.
Or if you're accidentally falling into them next time there's a pitch invasion.
Yeah, exactly. Give me a high five when I see you on the pitch next time.
I think you've bought yourself a fair bit of leeway, Wade, that's for sure. Amazing. Beautiful way to end it, and beautiful words. Thank you very much for your time, Wade.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.